Greetings and salutations. You are listening to the Untitled Podcast, where we take a look at the competitive side of the Commander format, also known as CEDH. I am one of your hosts, Reed, aka Sick Robot, and today I'm joined by my co-host Matt, aka Null.
What's up, everyone?
Morgan, aka Spleenface.
How's it going?
And our special guest today, Nick, aka Joking. Why don't you introduce yourself, Nick?
Hey everyone, my name is Joking101, otherwise known as Nicholas or Nick. I'm the executive director of Monarch Events, a nonprofit specialized in running Magic the Gathering events.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, we thought we'd have Nick on this episode because we are going to be going a bit in-depth this episode on covering event organization / tournament organization. That sounds a lot less interesting than it's going to be, I promise. It's going to be very interesting.
Oh my
it's
God.
just, I can't imagine, I just can't imagine our people like going to listen to a podcast about CDH and then tuning in for an in-depth discussion on how to organize online events. But I promise it's interesting and it's an integral part of like the CDH community actually running. So
Joking, tell us all about how you structure your sign-up spreadsheets.
Oh yeah.
I can't imagine using a spreadsheet to handle signups. Those days are past. We've got new tools.
Without further ado, we're just gonna top in some housekeeping and new developments before we get into the main topic there. First up, housekeeping. We got some new patrons. Matt, we wanna
Sure. John G.
Comedian. Thanks, Ian.
And Beard Umbra.
Great name, by the way. You rock. / you are a mana rock. I wonder how transformative this is gonna have to be when we get the cease and desist.
It'll erase all of our content off the internet.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So that's our housekeeping. Moving on to new developments. First off, I guess I'll cover this one. We have a new database update out. As of
the
time
much
this
teased
recording.
database update.
Yeah. Unfortunately enough, we did have some issues with the website. There were some technical issues on the back end that we had to work out for like a couple of weeks or like a week and a half after we had actually finished the update, but it's out and it will have been out for a while as of this being released. So go check it out. There's a bunch of new lists that you can go check out of the Brewers Corner, some stuff that got moved to the main database page, all that good stuff. So yeah, just do that. And also don't forget to submit your lists, because the next submission period cutoff is going to be on the 5th of December. If this comes up before then, which I hope it does.
Hope it does.
Yeah, make sure to get your stuff in before then.
As a reviewer, I definitely
review.
know to release this after the 5th of December.
Right.
And then just shovel it into the next update. No thanks. So yeah, do that. We're also brought on a new crop of reviewers this time, so hopefully that should speed up things. Although we've had a couple of people leave the team as well, so it's more that we're just maintaining our list. But yeah, we should also be setting up a new application form for new reviewers at some point, either this current review cycle rather, or next review cycle. So if you're interested in that, make sure to go apply and do that stuff. So that's the database update. Next up, we have upcoming events. I think there's only one here, but we did want to talk about it a bit. Morgan, you want to talk about this?
I actually, I snuck this in on you, so I don't know if you know anything about it.
I mean, I do know something about
yeah,
it, but by all means, go ahead.
Yeah, so the only upcoming event that I know of, at least in the CDH sphere, is the Portugal event. They're running a CDH event with a cradle on the line for first place, which is pretty crazy.
Wow.
Not every day you can win an entire Gaia's cradle in a CDH event. I think the signups are filled for it, and I'm not sure which weekend it is. It might be. I know it's coming up here in December, but it's they've been running a bunch of cool events over in Portugal and have been using some of the same tools. I met the organizer for this event when I was at Tier 1, so it was pretty cool seeing them start to grow their community as well.
Awesome. Yeah, we did. There was a bit of the Portugal scene at Tier 1 Con, which is great to see. It's always awesome to see. I don't know. We see a lot of like the online events and like US centric events a bunch on like the online CDH sphere, but it's easy to forget, and we've seen this a lot, that there are like a bunch of great events being run in like Portugal, Japan. I know that there was Russian events being run before COVID happened, and I'm assuming it'll pick up again at some point, which is awesome. I think Brazil has run events before. It's just great to see.
Did you know that the biggest CDH event of all time in terms of player attendance was a Brazilian CDH event?
I am not surprised.
No, but wow.
CDH is hot down there.
I did actually know that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
But didn't they have like over 200 people?
Yeah.
Or it was almost.
Wow.
It was like 203 or something, and Marquesa was like 180. So they're the only CDH event that I know of that ever hit 200 people.
Brazilian CDH scene is strong. I mean, they already have like, they basically have two super groups for content creation, right? Like CDH Brazil and Split Second.
Well, Split Second is Portuguese.
Oh, is it Portuguese? I thought it was Brazil. Okay, never
Pretty
mind.
sure it's Portuguese.
Okay, yeah. In that case, maybe it's just Portuguese language strong. Who knows? Anyway,
Exactly.
Well, isn't CDH TV? Isn't Mons also from Portugal?
No, he's from
No.
Sweden.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know my
Anyway.
nationalities. I'm sorry.
Anyway,
I'm sorry, Mons.
we're
Please
gonna
One
stop.
Brazilian supergroup.
We're gonna stop digging ourselves into holes here. Go check out this event when it happens. We'll have
I'm
a
pretty sure I'm crushing it.
we'll have a link to either the Reddit post, or if they have an actual thing set up, we'll have that in the description. So go check it out. And if they don't post their VODs, go ping them and ask for them to post VODs, because it's always great to have more VODs for this kind of stuff. Aside from that, only other new development since the last time we recorded an episode was Crimson Vow coming out. New set. Hey. Unfortunately, not a huge number of playables in this one. Bit of a small set as well, so, happens. But there's some fun stuff. There's like a Hullbreaker horror, Tox roll. Bit of fun stuff in there.
CDH Viable Frog.
Yeah, exactly.
Ugh.
Oh boy. Gotta get
It's
the shots
out.
in while he's not here. Did anybody
Okay,
go...
that's not fair. I take the shots when he's here.
Right. Did anybody
He just
go
happens
to...
not be here.
I know none of us did. Joking, did you go to a pre-release event for this?
I sure did not. I don't go to pre-release events anymore. I can't play Mana Crypt in them.
Checks out. I mean, you could have played Mana Crypt at a pre-release event once in the past 5 years, but
That's true.
Was it Amonkhet or was it?
No, it was. I don't remember if it was Kaladesh or Aether Revolt. I think it's Kaladesh.
Oh, sorry.
Doesn't-
Kaladesh or Aether Revolt. I think it was
Double Masters had 2XM had Mana Crypt in it.
Oh,
did it
that
not?
too.
That
Yeah.
is true.
it did.
Two
yeah.
sets.
Also,
Did it
I
have
think
a
it was also
pre-release?
Ultimate Masters. I don't know if there
I
was
think-
pre-release for them, but there was definitely some Masters.
I don't
sets.
think
they might
Master
not
Sets
have,
have
yeah.
pre-releases in the same
I think
way.
it was just either Kaladesh.
I mean, LGS has certainly just put them on.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, I did want to say that because that is actually something that happened to me at the pre-release that I went to for that Kaladesh set. Is
Wow.
somebody opened a Mana Crypt and I had to play against them first round.
Oof.
Fun, yeah. I actually won that match because Mana Crypt just bolted him to death in the third game.
Turn
It was
one
great.
Mana Crypts in
The
a 20
classic.
format.
Yeah, in draft especially when you're like not actually accelerating anything good out.
Yeah, especially because you certainly can't build your deck on the
Yeah.
assumption that you're gonna have Mana Crypt.
Yeah.
So you're like, I still have to play a bunch of 1 and 2 drops, so maybe this Mana Crypt is
Yeah.
not the
Not
best.
great. Cool. Yeah, so we're gonna get into our main topic now. Again, topic that we're talking about is event and tournament organization and sort of all the behind the scenes stuff that goes on around that, because if the people listening to this don't know, and you should, Nick Joking is a very prolific event tournament organizer in the CDH sphere, runs basically every major online CDH event at least that happens for the most part, or at least a majority of them. So
I would say that was true, but some of the stuff that we've seen, honestly, in the past 3 months, I mean, we've seen like sort of 3 major CDH events that have
That's fair.
come down outside of my domain, which is,
I mean,
which
that
is really
being-
awesome to see.
yeah, that is awesome to see. That being said,
So
I
you're
feel
saying
like
you're slipping?
yeah, exactly. So yeah, we just wanted to get Joking's thoughts on some of this stuff, because it's I don't know, I feel like in the CDH community, one of the main talking points is like the actual like how do we make CDH a tournament format, and like the rules and like policy in terms of like the actual like running of tournaments specifically. And like of course like there's all like the like quarter case ruling stuff that is like a point of pride for people. It's like, do you know how this interaction works? Or like,
Yeah.
just like there's all those inside jokes, but we don't really get a lot of talk about like how actually running events goes on behind the scenes. That's not just like how do you run the tournament, but also like how do you run everything else around there. Like, I mean, for almost all moniker events at this point, like you're running a stream, you're running the tournament, you're usually running some form of like side publicity event or some fundraiser to go to charity as well as running the tournament at the same time. So
it's gotten completely out of control. It's always it's way too much.
So yeah, I mean, I just like, but that's what people need to know about, right? So I figured just go through and talk about that a bit.
Absolutely, I'd love to.
So how about we go from like starting like the inception of an idea of an event to execution. Right. So like when you come up with an idea for an event, even if it's just like a regular CH tournament, like what steps do you start taking after that to actually like bring it into reality?
So I guess there's two main components here, and I'll ask you which one you'd prefer I dive into. The first is sort of the infrastructure. So the first time you run an event, you need to establish a bunch of pieces of information, right? Like the tournament rules or the tournament structure, or if you're going to do a stream or not, and you start asking like some of the more nitty-gritty policy questions that remain essentially the same from each tournament. Or would you prefer if I was talking about an event with my infrastructure that's already been set up? So I already have my tournament structures and my code of conducts and things like that.
How about we quickly go over like and actually Matt, Morgan, if you have like a particular preference, but I'm feeling like maybe just like touch on what you might need to get set up, and then we can sort of go into like how we actually spin up an event after we have those things.
Yeah, I think that at least going over in brief sort of the logistics is not a bad idea for context, and then we can, when logistics things come up in sort of the more subjective part of the discussion, we'll have the context we need to like make sense.
Sweet.
Yeah, concur.
One of the first things that I would start to speak to, and I think this is one of the more tangibles for TOs and things that they start to think about right away, is the tournament structure, right? You need to know how you plan to do, how many rounds you want to do. You need to, figure out the systems, right? When you look at the Magic tournament rules, the MTR, right? There's a framework, there's an established system for running a Magic the Gathering event at different levels of rules enforcement. There are things about CEDH that simply don't fit, right? So you need more rounds in a Swiss thing than you might for a 1v1 format, because there's you don't play a best of 3, you usually play a best of 1, and so there are things along those lines that you need to sort of think about and figure out first and foremost. Some of the other things that you sort of think about in terms of setup is finding judges. So the first time that I ran an event, I needed to go find judges who wanted to participate, and then for future events, I can usually call back up the same judges and say, hey, you want to come judge for me again? Setting up the code of conduct or the tournament policy. We use the same code of conduct and the same tournament policy for all of our events, but the first time you have to sit down and write those policy documents, and you need to get them reviewed. And this is one of the huge values of having a judge working with your event, and that's, I think, the first piece of advice I would give to any person who's looking to run a tournament. Find ideally a level 2, but a level 1, an experienced level 1 if you can, to sit down and walk you through it, because there are things that tournament organizers like to think about the CEDH section of it, but they'll often neglect to pay attention to the established traditional 60 card sets of rules that exist and that work very, very well for large scale events. So those are some of the things that I start to think about.
I feel like that's actually something that like people really don't think about enough in terms of like running specifically CDH events, where even like running an F&M tournament is relatively easy because you have a lot of resources to pull on in terms of like what do 1v1 events look like. You can like basically even just like run an F&M like very easily in terms of structure, and then policy is just like copied from store policy, or you can copy it from like examples that other people have run, or just like basic MTR stuff. Whereas in CDH, there's like a lot of stuff that's not covered by that, and you sort of have to build from the ground up in terms of a lot of the policy, especially around like more multiplayer focused like social aspects of the game, right? I feel like that's a big thing that you have to sort of get down to paper, is like how you deal with specific interpersonal situations inside of a game, because it also gets a lot more complicated when it's not 1v1, right?
Absolutely. I mean, some of the things that you have to deal with players, you know, here's an interesting trend actually. You may notice, if you go to a standard 60 card event, players call judges all the time. You go to a 4-player event, players almost never call judges. And I pose the question to you, why do you think that is, right? Like, why do you think there's such a dichotomy there? I mean, in theory, it should be the same format. There's more complicated rules interactions, but what is it about sitting at a table with 4 players that removes or reduces a player's desire to call a judge?
I mean, there's already 2 other people there to chime in, I guess.
I also think that like it becomes much harder to be confident that you can convince a judge, right? Like when there's 2 adversarial perspectives, you know, you're calling a judge, my opponent did XYZ, you know, they say no, I didn't, you have whatever evidence you have to establish it. But then when you have 2 other people in the pod, it's like, well, are they just gonna contradict me, or are they gonna like, you know, I don't know, I don't understand their perspective on this interaction necessarily. And so like it makes me a little bit uncomfortable to like call a judge and potentially be relying on them to back me up when like I don't know that that's what's going to happen. Could at least be a factor.
I think also, unfortunately enough, completely outside of the context of it being like a 4-person format or whatever, or that like that effect that like might be had on calling judges, I feel like a lot of the people that participate in CH tournaments also just aren't used to tournament structure / like regular tournament procedure in terms of like how easy it is to call a judge / like how often you should be calling a judge. Like I feel like a lot of the people that are participating in CDH events might not have much, if any, experience in 1v1 events, especially like larger 1v1 events, like you know, like a PTQ or a GP.
I think that's my best guess. I'm confident that there's some component of like, you know, if I call a judge, I'm gonna anger the people at my table, and now they're not gonna like be as favorable to me throughout the rest of the game. But I think it's more that the primary audience for people who play CDH are people who play EDH, not tournament grinders. I mean, we have tournament grinders, but like, you know, I'm much more competitive in CDH than I ever was when I played 60 card. I don't know if that's the same for you guys.
To an extent, like I've gone to a GP and like played in the main event and stuff like that, but certainly I've played a lot more entry feed like meaningful prized events in CDH than I have in 60 card formats.
And I mean, certainly a lot of my
same.
A lot of my I'd say a lot more of my successes in CH rather than 1v1 tournaments. I would say I'm like I would consider myself not a confident like player in like limited formats or 1v1 formats, but I'm certainly much better results wise at CDH. So
I mean, for individual prize payouts, you're definitely on the list.
Yeah, we need an esports earning website to just track all the CDH wins. Right? When's that coming out, guys?
Yeah, exactly. A companion to the deck list, whatever. Yeah. Anyway, continue.
But those are the types of things that I have to consider, right? That I'm looking at ahead of an event, and every TO has to sort of think about and starts to want to think about, right? Like a lot of the TOs I talk to, and even not necessarily just TOs, but players who enjoy playing competitively will ask questions related to some of those weird intangibles of multiplayer, like the king making or the spite play. once you have a general policy for all those things and you sort of built out your structure or your procedure guide, whatever it may be, then you mostly don't think about it, right? I haven't updated my code of conduct or my tournament policy since March, and I've run 4 or 5 events since then. Fortunately, the policy was strong enough that we didn't really have to change much. And, the individual event details change from event to event. But the
I
first
don't know,
thing
but I saw someone in a YouTube comment section somewhere thought that you did a terrible job, so maybe you do need to. Did you ever think of that?
I accept the YouTube comment feedback, but I need it to be precise. I've got a relatively thick skin for this kind of stuff. I mean, you kind of have to be when you're forward facing and player facing in many of these ways. If you take personal offense to receiving criticisms or feedback about your event, you should not be in the business of running an event. I'll tell you right now. It's some of the feedback you get is pretty brutal, but it's mostly you just have to remember it's out of a place of love and a place of passion, right? People just want the best event.
And or they want to win. One of the two.
Yeah,
yeah,
one of the two. I mean, you can want to win and want, the best type of event that you can get. So, with with the general sort of setup out of the way, that's when I start, looking at an event itself, right? So we're between Monarch is between events right now. We finished up Oktoberfest last month. I'm taking a bit of a personal break off after I do for basically every event. I have a list here from the summer. It was a pretty busy summer for me with some of the stuff I was doing. And something I would offer to TOs as well, if you're looking at running an event, is keeping in mind, where your time goes and be cautious about burnout. I do my best to present pretty awesome events, but it does take a fair bit of time, and oftentimes you can run yourself into the ground if you're not careful. So
I feel like a part of that as well that like probably doesn't get talked about that much is that, especially when you're running like larger scale events, when you start getting like upwards of 100 entrants, which obviously like not a lot of tournaments do even at this point, but even like I guess even like once you get above like at like 64 entrants at a certain point, you really have to start learning to like delegate tasks, I feel like, because it can be really easy going from like a small like TOing smaller events, especially like if you like say you have experience running FNMs or you have experience running like just random like 1-day weekend events at an LGS or even online, with like a relatively small number of entrants. It can be really easy to like just think that you can take on a larger event just by like scaling up a bit of your workload plus like bring other people on, but you really have to be able to actually, I feel like, delegate that work to other people / be comfortable bringing other people on to help out. I don't know if that lines up with your experience, but yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. The reality is that a tournament organizing position, right, running an event, is essentially management. Event management, people management, project management, it's all sort of blends together when you're running a big scale event. When you start talking about all these side things, right, for we can use Marquese as an example. We brought on 7 different groups of content creators, and we had a partnership with Alter Sleeves, and we had a side event going on with auctions, and a vendor stand, and we had the CEDH main event, and we had the stream. And when all these things start compiling on, unless your full-time job is running that event, you don't have enough time in the day. If you have any amount of semblance of other responsibilities in your life, it very, very quickly will get out of hand. I mean, there's periods of time where I would expect to be in 1 to 3 meetings per day every day for the 2 or 3 weeks leading up into the event, and these are like 30 to 60 minute meetings. Part of that is a function of my managerial style. Part of that is a function of the way that I like to do work and coordinate and interact with different people. But it's absolutely something where, unless, like I said, unless that's what you do each and every single day, you need to be comfortable delegating and spreading out some of that responsibility, because the amount of stuff you have to do will quickly climb, and in ways you don't even necessarily anticipate.
So actually, in terms of that, I'm actually interested in what you sort of have to say on this specifically. Is when you do have to start like bring more people on to handle different aspects of a tournament, what would you say are like the key not positions, but like the key like sub parts or like parts of a tournament or event that you need to like split out to have like different people manage, if you do have that kind of thing, or if you're just thinking of it on the spot.
Yeah, can I actually tack on a little bit to that question because I have a similar question.
Yeah, go for it.
But do you derive from kind of a common set of people, and then what's common among those people that you find them to be good?
Could you give me that question rephrased?
Sure. So you have a certain set of people you need to recruit that fill certain roles. Are there people that you find are good that you generally recruit from multiple events, or do you kind of just whoever's available for the next one?
Gotcha. Okay. So to sort of go with what you were saying there, Reed, absolutely. There's if I could give you a pretty tangible list off the top of my head of the number 1, number 2, number 3 priority for any given event. And to sort of chime in on what you're talking about there, Matt, absolutely. There are people that I essentially, once I have somebody that I know does the thing the way I need it to be done, or has the experience of working with me, I am very, very inclined to just keep bringing them back event after event. When you find good people, and it's very, very hard to do so, but when you find good people, it would be very foolish to let them go. So it's definitely a matter of like, I try to find the very best people that will do whatever it is that I need done, and bring them aboard and level them up to the best of my ability. I did something like 20 interviews ahead of Summer Bloom to figure out finding some TOs and getting people involved and picking different stuff, and I only ended up bringing aboard like 5 or 6 of them for various different things. Some of those were casters, some of those were TOs and that kind of stuff. But like I do lots of interviews, and yeah, that's 20 hours of my life that I just spent doing interviews, 14 hours of which were essentially a waste of my time in the sense that I didn't bring them aboard. But it's good to see what options exist and who's interested in being involved. To give you that list of the number 1, number 2 priority for people, judge number 1.
So
I cannot say it enough. Head judge number 1. That is your the dynamic duo. If you had to pick 2 people for an event, your head tournament organizer and your head judge are essentially the backbone of the event itself. The way that I set up my events, and I certainly am not going to proclaim that it is the best way. We haven't seen enough events for that to be true, but the way that I do my events is the tournament organizer is responsible for doing like tournament stuff, logistical stuff, back-end stuff, but the judges are the first and foremost player interaction. Those are the ones who actually interact with the players. Those are the ones who take calls. Those are the ones who answer questions. You get your judges up to speed, make sure they know and master the policy that you have set up. You enable them and set them up for success, and then you do not pay any attention to them all event. And I don't mean that in like you're not interacting and talking with the head judge, but I mean you want your judges to be wholly independent. Do not make them rely on you. Champion your judges, champion them to succeed and to thrive and to grow and to be independent during the event. And if you have a really experienced L2 and a couple of L1s, it'll be a great opportunity for them to take on those responsibilities. Something that I see for a lot of TOs is they have their fingers in every pie, and that's fine until it gets too big for you to do that. And one of the easiest ways to get things off of your plate during an event is give those responsibilities to your judges. Most of them, L1s and L2s are trained by wizards, essentially, by the Judge Academy to do that stuff. And if they're strong, that's the way you want to do it. I've seen a lot of people who are judges who want to run events as well, and I do strongly advise against it. Either be a judge or be a tournament organizer, but generally you do not want to cross those lines. After judges, in terms of people that I recruit, as it scales, of course, if you have a stream, you need a stream manager. You need somebody who's going to champion interactions with the casters, with the recruiting, with the scheduling. A stream manager role is a job in and of itself on the day of an event. If you do not have one person dedicated to doing all of the stream stuff on the event, you are going to be spread too thin.
So actually,
I would also
I would ask for that. Would you say like a stream manager for like an event, say, I don't know what like a recent mid-sized event that you did was like, not something like hyper massive and intensive, but for like a relatively mid-sized event, would the stream manager also be the person running the stream, or would you have like a stream manager and then a stream runner and then like commentators, and the stream manager would handle all of those people?
Right. Okay. Good question. So it's typically casters' only job is to cast. There are situations where that's not true, but generally casters, their job is to be on camera. At minimum, you need the person who is running the stream, right? OBS,
Yes,
Twitch,
who
the
actually
person who's
has
handling
OBS up. Yeah.
yeah, there's always that person. That person is one. It's very hard to find people who are good at that, and two, it's a very tough job because you are on the whole time. Like most of the time, the stream is running its own, and you're not like focused on it, so you can like do something on the side or shuffle magic cards or talk with people, but you're never off the stream. You always have to do it. With that in mind, I recommend having somebody else who handles the logistics of, if you have different sets of casters, you need somebody who tells those casters that they're done and brings somebody else on. Or if you have, you need to send information to the casters, let them know that there's going to be a cut to top 64 or something is changing. Somebody who gets the deck lists for the casters. We typically had for our larger events where the stream manager was more busy with the little things like transitions or screen cuts and bringing up cards during the stream if they came up. We had that split into two roles. You could probably do it with one, but you're going to sacrifice a little bit in terms of quality and in terms of their mental health because it's
right.
It's a long day, right?
Yeah.
So that's ideally, I want. And the funny thing is about this too is that we're talking about this in terms of the day of the event, but you also have to think about the 3 months that go into it. You start talking to the content creators, months in advance.
Oh yeah.
I'm assuming at some point today we'll be talking about Marquesa 2022. I've already reached out to a couple of you guys about whether or not you could be involved in an event that I'm running, 4.5 months from now, hypothetically, right? If I were to run an event 4.5 months from now, that's the timeline you have to be talking about. And so being conscientious of how long the timeline takes and having somebody like a stream manager dedicated to running and handling those content creation roles or those guest roles, that stuff takes a lot of time to do. So that's another piece to think about as well. It's not just that you have somebody who needs to show up for 12 hours and run a stream. Ideally, you have somebody who shows up every single week for a couple hours to help you plan out what the stream will look like for months in advance.
Yeah, it's like figuring out, I'm assuming stuff like figuring out schedule, figuring out like even just like, I'm assuming like assets, like transitions, overlays, that kind of stuff. The actual like visual style of the stream, like what your caster schedule looks like, all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that, and frankly, I'm not able to speak in much depth to it because I've been delegating it the whole time I've been doing it. Frankly, I hate doing the stream stuff.
It's a mark of a good TO, right? Just delegation.
Yeah, it's neither my area of expertise nor my passion. So I've been, for Marquesa, I had very little to do with it, and I really tried to help, my stream manager Mike take on a lot of that responsibility, and so he was interfacing with most of the casters and helping plan out the schedules. Something else with guest casters and in the online world is you need to check out that people have good setups. When you talk about a stream, video quality is important, but audio quality is way more important. People can watch a bad video with good audio, but very, very few people will want to watch a good video with bad audio.
Something that we know oh so well. God, if you went back and read the like the Reddit comments on our pilot for audio quality, is just like absolutely a shit show.
I cannot listen to this.
Yeah.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah, audio quality is very important. So those are some of the things in terms of stream. If you do a stream, add all that stuff in. The other thing that happens is these side events. Josh from the marketplace has championed the side events for both Marquesa and Oktoberfest. So a lot of the auctions, basically all of the auctions and basically all of the vendors have been coordinated through the marketplace and what Josh does over there. So I mean, for me, it's really nice. The first one I was a bit unsure because I hadn't worked with Josh before, and once I sort of said, "Yeah, man, you take this lead, just let me know what you need," he knocked it out of the park. And so that's been another thing where it's been really nice for me to help delegate, because that's another, between 10 and 20 hours leading into an event to coordinate everything that's going on with those. So if you're really, what you want to think about is, for each major segment, you need somebody to champion it and to be the manager. And as a head TO, you want to be looking at everything. You always want to have some amount of your involvement in each thing. You need to know what is going on, but you don't want to be doing the nitty gritty. You just don't have the time for it.
Great. Yeah, so I mean, I feel like that's a actually pretty great overview of the core verticals, I'd say, of running an event, especially a CDH event at this point. I sort of wanted to get in now to sort of the run up to an event, like the actual day itself, and all the stuff that needs figuring out before then. I'm looking at, if you can see on the on the show notes, sort of these categories here. So yeah, we're sort of looking at stuff you want to be able to market it, make sure people actually show up to the event. I guess actually how you would handle signups too is sort of in this category. How you bring on content creators, how you reach out to that kind of stuff, and then also how you actually fund an event. I guess.
Oh God, funding.
Yeah. Oh man.
That's the bane of my existence, is the fact that I don't have an infinite amount of money. Do you know how many problems I can solve? If I had $100,000 more, my events would be great,
But okay, so let's break this down, because that's a lot to knock out all at once. So let's go sort of a bit more piece by piece for this. So let's start with marketing.
Sure.
So what's your experience been with marketing? What I guess, what have you found that well, maybe let's run through the process first, and then you can sort of maybe talk a bit more about what you have found works, what you found doesn't work.
Sure. So the first piece that I want to sort of put into your brains is that I work off of essentially a project management chart. There's a spreadsheet that I have that has every single day between now and whenever my event is going to be. And before I even embark on one of these things, I build out my timeline. This is when I want to have my first round of marketing and promotion out. This is when I want my second round of marketing and promotion. This is my final round of marketing. This is this deadline. This is this deadline. This is this deadline. It's really, really important when you start talking about marketing to keep in mind people's reception to marketing. I'll tell you out of the gate, so I have a business degree. I took marketing in university. It's not only is it not my favorite, I think it might be my second least favorite, second only to accounting, in terms of the classes that I hated taking the most. I really hate marketing. With that said, you need to understand the amount of receptiveness. People don't want to be bombarded by something. But at the same time, you need to do it with a frequency that people will be able to see. In terms of marketing, the first impression is typically the most important. I mean, some of this stuff is basic marketing, but it can be valuable to reiterate. If you don't put your best foot forward the first time somebody sees a piece of promotion or a piece of whatever interest or project it is, they will disregard or not look at the following ones in the same light. So it's almost important. It's almost the most important that your first piece of marketing, which is between 3 and 4 weeks out from the event, is very, very well done, because people will look at that, and if they see one 2 weeks out from the event, they might be like, well, I didn't really care the first time. Why would I care now?
What do you think is generally a particular aspect of marketing that makes a first impression really hit?
Professionalism. And it's kind of a cop-out, because it's well, obviously, but sincerely, that's when people, and this is more applicable to paper than it is to online. When people are paying money for something, they want an expectation. Right? They set up an expectation in their mind of what they are getting in return. And if you need to buy, not necessarily buy, but you need to earn trust. If you don't have a reputation, right? If you're new or fresh and, people have never heard of you, you want the first impression to be, this is an event that is going to be so great that I don't want to miss it. It needs to be presented in a way that it's like, these aren't just, two kids who want to have a good time throwing together a bash at the LGS. Like, you absolutely do that if you want 16 people. But if you're trying to pull in, 64 or 100, right? If you want to set records or push the boundary of what is possible, you need to come across as having all of your shit together from square one.
Yeah, I certainly got that impression with Tier 1, and that made me fly, across the globe. So
yeah, and that's the difference.
It can be very compelling.
The great thing about Tier 1 for me was that I didn't have to do very much marketing. They had a lot of, internal stuff and business stuff that they already had to do. I did some, Reddit posts and Discord posts and stuff like that. But if you don't have, I'm in a position now where, for the most part, I like to think that if I put my name on something, that people understand what the quality is going to be. But I had to work towards that. And, it's, you always have to battle what is the impression? What is the general impression of the events? There's, I follow, and you can think about this in terms of other sports, right? If somebody hosts an esport event, right? Let's say League of Legends or something. I don't know. Somebody runs a League of Legends event and the computers don't work properly and the players are dealing with tons of delays and the stream quality is super poor. That's it. You're toast. You're done. I mean, there's like 2 documentaries on the fire thing, and that's like a big event that was supposed to happen and then broke apart, right? Like, it's very easy to irrevocably tarnish your name with a bad event.
I'm just waiting for the CDH equivalent of the Firefest. Dude, I'm ready. Just flying out a bunch of content creators and random people to a desert island somewhere to play a CDH event. Just leaving them there.
But that's the thing, right? Like,
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, okay. No, it's fine.
I thought I lost internet there.
Yeah. Okay, so I was actually gonna ask though. So like, I'm assuming then, all of this in mind, that sort of like brand recognition / brand awareness / just building your brand as a TO or whatever organization you're TOing under is like a super core part of like running multiple successful events. I'm assuming you can probably run one successful event at least, just like blind bringing in people, but it probably gets harder after that point if people like have a tarnished idea of what your personal brand or your whatever brand looks like.
Yeah, I think also we're in a world right now that there's 2 weird competing things here in terms of marketing and getting people to attend your events, right? There's in the online space, you're competing with people's time. So to give you an example, Marquesa was very, very easy to get people to come to because it was a year into a pandemic. People are still at home. Things aren't really opening up. Vaccines aren't really available. Spending a Saturday playing Magic on the internet, totally doable. That's something that you could realistically do. For Oktoberfest, I'm competing with people who are out playing Magic in person. That's a much, much harder sell. And especially as we look into the future with people running more and more paper events with vaccines and travel, Tier 1 obviously had to face a bunch of challenges in terms of getting people to come to Europe. And frankly, I am impressed and astounded that they were able to do as much as they did. Now, they definitely did solve some problems with money, which is not an opportunity that, that we all have available to us.
Really a sustainable business practice, unfortunately. But on the other hand,
and to be fair, they did sell a lot of Magic cards that weekend. But with all of that said, you have to keep in mind some of those logistics. It's much harder to get people to spend their time online if they have the alternative of paper, and it's much harder to compel people to travel right now, just due to concerns about various concerns about COVID and vaccination, especially if it's international. So there's these two components that you have to be thinking about when you run your event. You don't want to run an event at the same time as someone else, which is fortunately not been too much of a problem because we haven't had too many events. But the June, July, August of this year was absolutely jam packed with events.
Oh yeah,
like I've never. It was crazy. I
we
so
we
burnt out at
had
the
a
end.
stretch there where like every weekend there was like a fairly major tournament happening.
Yeah, it was
Sort of crazy.
and it was absolutely crazy.
Yeah, Reed only got to be reigning champion for like a week or something.
Yeah, it's actually
Wow.
We didn't even
vast
get
salt.
back from Europe, and it's like
Yeah.
Tier 1 Con's old news.
Yeah. It was already
Yeah,
I think like we like came back from Europe, and I think it was like the playing with power sub tournament had already happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
It
plan,
was just like,
which I also ran.
Yeah,
by
literally the
way.
next
Yeah.
weekend. Wait, what?
I,
yeah,
I
wait, Matt,
landed
you didn't
on
know
Wednesday
that? Yeah.
and ran
No.
another
Yeah.
event on Saturday.
Nick's psychotic.
Yeah.
I thought we established
What
this.
do you mean?
So yeah,
You set the
if,
schedule, and it all works.
if that wasn't something that we made abundantly clear at the start of this episode, Nick is like such an abnormality in terms of the like insane amount of work that he subjects himself to running tournaments on a regular
It's-
basis.
It's
Yeah,
a
I
lot.
feel like you said, we have some tournament grinders. I feel like you're the real tournament grinder.
I'm a
Meta
TO
grinder.
grinder. It's a different domain. I don't get to play as much Magic. That's the problem.
So I actually realized that I've been building up questions, which are really bad. I should have been asking these at the time, but we'll get through a couple of these right now. So
I also go on tangents, so
yeah, no,
it's not
totally
a problem.
fine. it's my fault as a host that I'm not getting in and trying to get information out when I need it. So first of all, I actually wanted to ask, with all that in mind, in terms of marketing and draw and like actually getting signups happening, I actually wanted to ask, how much of an impact do you think that prize support actually has on that? Because I've heard differing opinions, and it seems like you can get relatively successfully large events without a huge amount of prize support. But it also is, like, we've also seen a couple of tournaments like throw a ton of prize supports and also get fairly large numbers. So like, I'm sort of wondering what your opinion on that / what your experience with that has been.
So there's this concept in marketing called market segmentation.
Mm-hmm.
Target market. You basically look at different groups of people. When you talk about prize support, what you're doing is you're essentially trying to appeal to the people who like to see headlines. There's a segment of our population who do not particularly want to read a breakdown, Reddit post about an event. But if they see, $10,000 event, that's enough for them for it to register, for that to lock in, and to be like, oh, that's an event that I'm either interested in following, interested in going to, or at least this is a piece of information that I'm going to file away in my brain. So for those people, having a big number that you can throw on the line just spreads in a way that is really nice, frankly. If I'm going to tell somebody about this event that's going on, I'd love to say, oh yeah, somebody such and such ran a 5K, right? Think about how big a prize that is. You talk to your friends. It can build up sort of authentic hype in the community with just a big number. With that said, something that I've found when I talk to more of the enfranchised grinders is that prize support is almost entirely irrelevant in terms of them showing up to an event. So this was something that I learned about when I was talking with, I think it may have been Rebel, actually. I was talking with Rebel about it, and she said essentially, I don't care how much money there is on the line. I want the glory. Make an event that I can brag about winning. And so there's this other group of people that you need to talk to and think about in terms of, it doesn't matter how big of a money it is you put on the line if the games themselves aren't fun, or the event experience itself is not fun. So it absolutely helps. I think it absolutely does, especially in getting into the ears of people who don't know much about it. It adds a big number lends a level of legitimacy. Somebody's willing to put up this much money for it. Surely it's worth it's worth my time, or at least worth my attention.
Right.
But that's not going to necessarily get you the people who are here to win.
Right. So like it's
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, go for it.
oh, I was just gonna say, certainly, like, it's nice to, you know, have prize support for events, but I'm certainly in the camp of I don't attend them for the prize support. And also, like, I've actually expressed in a few different, despite having actually won, you know, some of the more disproportionate prizes, I'm actually a fan of slightly more, sometimes smaller, but just more distributed prize payouts. Like, it's not like, oh, I really want to win the super fancy card or whatever. It's like I would prefer a lot of events if they prize down to like top 16 or top 13 or whatever their cutoff is, or things like that. Just smaller amounts. Obviously, like, it gets tricky, particularly with the online events, because cash is just kind of a bit of a rough sort of commodity to handle.
Yeah.
But like, that would actually be my preference.
Yeah. So I mean, if you want, I can talk money and events for you. It's a bit of a topic.
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, but I just meant, like, in terms of the motivations for me personally attending tournaments is not, oh, I really want to win the plateau. Like, I'm I'm happy that I won the plateau.
It's because you already have the plateau.
Yeah, I mean, so it's interesting that it seems like a big prize support number is more about bringing in people who aren't necessarily interested otherwise, rather than like maintaining the core group that like you're gonna bring into most tournaments. I guess it's more about like the core group of either tournament grinders or just people that regularly attend tournaments are more interested in like how smoothly the event is run and what your reputation is like, rather than the actual prizing. Whereas like new people coming in, prizing seems to be like a relative, like it seems to be like a good hook.
It's exactly that. It's a hook. I don't think you can, to some extent you can rely on a big, tier 1 definitely had people who showed up because they saw 10 dual lands. I want to be there. I'd love a chance to win a dual land or multiple.
Or the teased possibility of a time twister.
Yeah, that too.
Definitely helped.
Yeah, like that's awesome. You can get people with that for sure, but it is not the only thing that matters. You can't rely on that as your only method of marketing and only method of promotion. There's more to it than that.
But yeah, I mean, if you were offering early, if you want to talk money, we can talk money. I think it'd be really interesting, because I don't know, it's like it seems like funding of tournaments isn't something that really gets brought up a whole lot, especially in sort of the era that we're in right now, where I feel like we're like right in the midst currently of transitioning out of like small community run events that are like basically all passion project from whichever TO running with like donation pot like prizes that like we saw a lot of those like 2-3 years ago, to the point now where we're sort of in an in-between area with like sort of like semi-professionally run events. I'm not calling the execution semi-professionally run, but I'm saying like it's nobody's full-time job to run these events, right? For the most part. So yeah.
Well, yeah, tier 1, sure, but for basically everybody else that I know of, not quite. I mean, assuming you don't count my labor, right? Let's assume that my labor and my time is free.
We'll just assume that there's somebody at the top of all these events who's doing this for an incredible amount of non-existent money, just as a passion project. We'll just take that as a given.
So assume out of the gate that minimum 50 to 100 hours of time is spent. And okay, that's not a realistic number for most events, but for my events, assume realistically there's somebody who spent 50 to 100 hours of their own time not getting paid to run an event. In terms of actual like tangible cash flow in and out, I have lost in the neighborhood of multiple thousands of dollars running events. They are not only are they not profitable, they aren't even like even in terms of money. It's nothing but a hole that I throw money into to run events. And many times I'm happy to do so. But realistically, you talk about money in, and in the online world where you have to be very careful with charging entry fees. My events are ran on cockatrice. and you cannot monetize that due to Wizards' fair use policy. We're allowed to use Cockatrice for free, but if you restrict access to Wizards' IP with a pay gate, with money in front of it, you're in violation of the fair use policies. I cannot tell you how many times I've read that document.
Trying to find a loophole.
But you can't do it.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
The point is that you can't do it. I can't charge an admission fee. If I could, that solves a lot of problems, right? Now you have some reliable amount of income. But as it stands, as a nonprofit even, as much money as I've been able to recruit for charity, that's great, but it almost none of it comes to me.
Mm-hmm.
When we did Marquesa, for example, all the donations had a split, so we got some money to go to the prize pool, and we got some money to go to charity, and we got some money to go towards us. And almost all of the money that came towards us was spent paying for the PayPal fees to send all the prize support out to the people. Like, it's really not that much that comes into my coffers, as it were, in terms of events. And it's actually a big part of the reason that I'm not sure how many more events I'll be able to run, because it's kind of a pit I throw money into.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I feel like this is sort of, it's not really the dark side, but it's like a side of especially like smaller user base game tournaments or like events that doesn't get brought up a whole lot. Because I know just like the other competitive thing that I know the most about TOing, even though like I'm not super involved, is like the Super Smash Bros. Melee community. And I know that like a lot of those tournaments also run at a loss like year over year, and it's just like the passion of the head TO or like whoever's hosting the event, who like, and even then, like, they charge entry fee in those tournaments, and a lot of the time they're still running at a loss just to run these tournaments as a passion project. And I feel like a lot of people who are in these hobbies and like even entering tournaments consistently, like, don't know that, or just like don't get that like a lot of these things are run at a loss, and like people aren't really profiting off of it.
So CFB Las Vegas happened last weekend as of this recording, right?
Yep.
I guarantee you money, Channel Fireball lost multiple thousands, if not tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars running the event. What they made is, really what they're doing is they're creating a vendor hall for people to sell their products.
Oh yeah.
And they're building a brand.
I mean, I was about to say, it comes out of the marketing budget to run these events, right? Like, for any like larger company that's running events, like this all comes out of, in some way or another, maybe not directly coming out of the marketing budget, but it's under the marketing umbrella. Like, it's money dedicated to building the brand and raising awareness of the brand, right?
Exactly. And so go ahead, Matt.
I was going to say, in kind of a broad sense, I mean, what's the brand you're trying to build with all these tournaments?
So that's the question I'm asking myself. So one of the things, obviously talking about cash flow, and I had a really, really awesome conversation with Ryan from Playing with Power, because obviously the Playing with Power brand is one of the biggest ones in our sub community that is the CDH community.
Yeah.
And so I essentially asked him, I was like, how do you guys make money? Like, how do you justify the time? Like, we talked a bit about Patreon. Obviously, there's some element of that. Different types of crowdfunding. The big money maker in my domain, obviously as a nonprofit, is sponsorships.
Yep.
If you have a visible brand, if we run an event on Twitch and we receive 400 viewers, concurrent viewers over the course of it, or during the finals, or whatever it may be, that's some amount of marketing publicity and visibility that brands are willing to pay to put their logo on, and that's how you make money. The real problem here is that I hate doing that. Like, I love running events, but I hate sending cold call emails to corporations asking them to give me money. That's not nearly as much fun. But that's the side of business that I would have to operate under. If I wanted to make this my job, right? Hypothetically, if I wanted to do this full time, that is a core fundamental component of my business, and there's no escaping that.
Do you think that it would be worth it to look for like a volunteer partnership manager, if that's the case? Like, if you're maybe not for you or anything like that. Not asking like hard question there specifically, but more like if somebody's going to get into this, like, do you think that having like a partnerships manager is a valuable thing to like get the ball rolling on that kind of stuff and like get the advertising dollars in?
So, I mean, short answer is absolutely yes. The question is what are you trying to do? What's your goal? If your goal is to make this a job, if your goal is to live off of something like this, you need to make yourself the biggest brand, right? You need your business model. You need, thousands of viewers for every stream. And you have to stream regularly. You have to have tons of Twitch subs. You need to have a community manager who helps build and engage in content creation, right? When you talk about events, events are basically marketing for a brand, for a business, and that business is a Twitch stream or a YouTube stream or a Facebook stream, I guess. Like, that's your that's your core business model is
Billy stream, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like the demographic for CDH does not necessarily align with Facebook.
Anyway, dude, I don't know what you're talking about. The Facebook CDH group, just moi.
Only the spiciest takes on the Facebook CDH group. But that's the thing, right? Like your core business model is streaming. It's not running events. And that's the what's what I'm looking for, the inconsistency between what my passion is and what my skill set is and what a viable business model looks like. And so it's really tough for me to be in this position here where I know that I essentially can never make this my day job because I wouldn't want to do the things that I would need to do. If I had somebody who did, if I had somebody who had the knowledge and the passion and the desire to be the biggest CEDH brand that exists and wanted to champion that and work towards it and volunteer their time, awesome. I will run as many events as they need. But I don't have that person, and I haven't been able to find that person. I think a big problem is that the people who have the knowledge and the skill set and the desire to do that are already doing it. There's already a Playing with Power. There's already an Into the North. There's already a Play to Win. There's already a Mind Sculptors. Like, these are the people who are doing that thing. And so I have to ask myself, am I going to find a Ryan? Am I going to find a Sick Robot? Am I going to find a Callahan who wants to, champion or work towards the media structure in this way?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I
really hope you do.
It just seems like, yeah, it's something that you just have to really hope for. And I mean, one thing that I do hope is that the explosive growth of the CDH community can help out with that, because like obviously the more people we have in the community, the like wider skill sets that the general community has, and like the more that people are willing to put into this stuff. But yeah, I mean, like that's the downside of trying to build something like this on the relatively small community that CDH is right now, right? Is that like there's only so many people that you can look for.
It's not like we're pulling from a pool of the 50 best content creators to ever live on the planet. I don't have a Mr. Beast, right? Like,
yeah, like even like I thought you were going to say, but also like it's not like we're even pulling from a pool of like 50,000 people even too, right? Like
that's also true,
right? Like we're pulling from a pool of like maximum 10,000 in like actual people that care about CDH and aren't just like watching content, right? So
yeah,
and like that's like a hard upper bound. So
that's
yeah. So
yeah, I mean, probably the number of people who have either even just entered a tournament or participated in the organization of one is, I would be surprised if it's actually in the quadruple digits even.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I mean,
we're a small little community.
Like,
but it's great.
Maybe it's just a waiting game, right? Like maybe we just have to wait for more people to come in and just like buy time a bit, or like try to push CDH content more to get more people involved so that we can actually like turn this kind of stuff into like something sustainable. I don't know. Or maybe we just have to push even harder, and you just need to work 40-hour days and put in more work. Who knows?
Shoot, yeah, you're right. 40-hour days. I think that's the issue. Is there's not enough hours in the day. If only there were more. So I could volunteer even more of my time. Yeah, I think that's one of the other things that's cool about this community, though, is that it's very, very hard for people to, steal viewers from someone else. Like, we're not in a
Oh
position
yeah,
where,
no.
oh, Into the North put out a podcast. I guess that means I'm never watching anything Playing with Power does ever again. Like, that just doesn't happen. That's just not.
I don't
not
know
a
what you're talking about.
reality.
We're stealing every viewer from every other content group
Yeah.
whenever we release an episode. Definitely not
And
struggling
while
to
there
get
is-
monetized on YouTube.
Okay,
or
if we're
anything.
stealing viewers from other people, we're not doing a very good
Yeah,
job.
exactly.
Yeah, and the other thing too is like, there's only so many hours each person has in a day to consume content, and
Yep.
they will of course find and gravitate towards the ones they like the most. But even just having those viewers that choose their favorites means that there is more space available for people to do other things, right?
Yeah, I mean it's just cool. I mean, so I mean, unless you have anything else to talk about on that front, or Matt, Morgan, if you have any additional questions there. Cool. So I think just moving on a bit. So we do have a section here. I actually do want to get into this right now, but I'm gonna put an earmark on after this topic for a mini set of questions that I have. Anyway, getting into this sort of subtopic. So let's say we've done all the right setup. Somehow we managed to run a cash flow positive event. Who knows? It's a miracle. It happened. We had 100 people enter. Everything went relatively smoothly, let's say. No huge hiccups. What happens after an event? Because I guarantee you nobody thinks about this one. People might have thought about what happens before an event, how do they get this together? I guarantee you nobody has actually ever considered what happens after an event.
Well, first you have to sweep up all the pack wrappers off the
yeah,
floor. That's probably the most tedious part.
Yeah. The of course there's the more manual or menial tasks, the cleaning up packs, picking up trash, closing down the store or the venue or whatever it may be, right? There's those components which absolutely do exist, but I've been mostly insulated from at this point. The things that I more think about post-event is, and this I think has a little bit more to do with, leadership and being a positive force, and I guess maybe being a positive boss. I guess I don't particularly like the word because you can't really be the boss of somebody you don't pay, but the quote unquote person in charge of the team that's sort of ran the event. After tier 1, for example, I sat down for about an hour with each of my judges, and I talked about, essentially debrief the event. What were the wins? What were the things that you saw that were frustrating? What were the things that you struggled with? When you have a bird's eye view, you will see big picture problems. But when you are not on the ground, you will miss the intricate and little details that stick with the players. Each player is, insulated in a bubble, essentially, of their own experience. And as a TO, I can sit back and look at the organizational things, right? So, for me, coming out of Marquesa, the biggest thing on my mind was the fact that my platform crashed 3 times in 60 minutes, right? That was my takeaway as a bird's eye view of a TO. But how were the interactions with the judges? How was the interaction with the staff? Were you able to find your seats all right? How were the quality of your games? Did you play against good people? Did you have good experience with the judges when you called them? Those are the questions that I don't have the answer to. But I know people who do. The players and the staff. And so as a leader and as a champion of events, and if you have the desire to continue to grow, if you have the desire to continue to learn and to get better, the most valuable thing you can do is set aside time after each event to talk to every person who was a part of it. And of course, send out a Google poll to everybody to let them know, to give you feedback on how their event was. But
And then give them a
take that
coupon
and
for next thing. Oh my god, you send out a survey after an event and give people a chance at a raffle for a buy for the next tournament. Guarantee you'll get feedback.
Yeah, well, I've actually never had any issues with getting feedback. I get, in the neighborhood of 30 to 50 responses on each of them, which is
actually incredible.
That's a ton.
Yeah.
Yeah, compared to the amount of entry.
Yeah, never, and to be fair, I mean, that's still that's 20 to 25%, which is a lot in terms of feedback.
CTR, yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, it's actually been really nice. I have a lot of people. One of the cool things about the CDH community is that if you play in CDH events, you probably care a lot about the happening event.
Also, yeah,
so I get a lot of feedback. Yeah, and people also, you give, and there's an art to survey writing that I won't bother to go into, but you want to give people an opportunity to spend 2 minutes of their time doing the survey, and put no bound on the amount of time that they can choose to spend on the survey. So you set the floor nice and low, so people who just want to show up press 111 bad experience submit, and they can submit their survey and their feedback that way. But you provide boxes and opportunities for people to really dive deep into the things that you need to know about or you need to hear about.
Awesome.
In terms of,
I generally just press all ones and slam enter.
Yeah,
always room for improvement.
Freaking Nick, that guy.
Yeah, in terms of dealing with the staff themselves, right, and talking with the judges. That's why I literally spent, I sat down with each of my judges after tier 1 and talk about the wins, you talk about the loses, you talk about the things you want to see change. I think something people miss when they do feedback, things like that, is they talk a lot about the things that they want to change, but they will often miss noting the things that were successes. And I always try to do successes first, because it's easy to get caught up in this sucked, or this sucked, or this sucked. And you don't take the opportunity to sort of appreciate how much has grown since the last event, or how much has grown since 12 hours ago when the event started, right? It's really, really important that the people who do work, especially if they're working for free. I mean, if they're paid to some extent, you can do whatever you want, because that's your reward for showing up. But if you're working with volunteers, it's very, very important that you give people an opportunity to not only learn, to grow as individuals, to grow as leaders. If I have a stream manager, I want that stream manager to tell me what they learned from the event and what they gained and what skills they acquired or perspectives that they learned from. And that's how you grow the scene. That's how you grow tournament organizers, right? I don't have people that show up to my tournaments to be a TO for me and walk away having learned absolutely nothing. If that's happened, then I've failed.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah, it's a constant process of improvement, right? Like there's never going to be an event that goes 100% to plan, and you always have to have takeaways.
Not yet.
We'll see.
I'm
Maybe,
working on it. I'm trying so hard.
2031 or something, we'll get there eventually.
Yeah. The 20XX version of a CDH tournament. There's no flaws, and no game goes over 90 minutes.
And somehow we never had to do any buys, and everybody was happy with everybody else in their pod, and there was never any potential spy plays being made. In fact, there were never any judge calls at all. It just went perfectly to plan.
The 20XX judges are now obsolete.
Yep. We have robo judges.
Good luck deciding on some rules that somehow prevent people from going past 90 minutes.
We've come up
Everybody,
with come up with a perfect tie-breaking system, and we've come up with the perfect turn system as well.
And the perfect
static orb, all
top
end.
Whatever breaking system and playoffs, which definitely has no room for subjective opinion on what's the best way to structure it.
I think that the best way to structure it is playing 50 more games. I think that would be really good in terms of figuring out who's the best.
Oh, okay. No, that's actually what's happened. Is that the Earth's rotation at this point has slowed down so much that days are actually longer, so we could fit more games in over the weekend.
And you get more time to plan this thing.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, win-win.
2 months of lead time. You got all the time in the world.
It just takes giant rockets, going against the rotation of the Earth. That's all.
Okay, just special relativity. It's Joking spends 5 years in a hyperbolic time chamber planning the next event and comes out only like a month in the real world.
Marquesa 2080.
Yeah.
A best of 7. First to 7 wins in each pod is allowed to move on in quadruple elimination format.
The funny thing is that my admittedly limited but non-zero experience playing best of N rounds is that they're awful.
Yeah.
I feel like people suggest that all the time, like, oh, you shouldn't just have your your semifinals pod play a game, but like first of all having them play 5 games takes literally forever. But even if it didn't, like those 5 games get so fucky so fast.
Just like if you guys both remember from NSL, because I'm assuming this is part of what you're basing that opinion on, Morgan.
It's definitely a part of it, yeah, but it's not the only one.
No, but it's just like, it's so, it gets so weird and so bad so quickly.
Spent like 20 minutes making these like just absurd deals that were like, okay, how about we don't lose this game right here, right now, but then you won't win and you have to tutor this. And it's just like, because you have a win and I don't, so I want to try and get my win, and then we can play another game. And it's.
I'm still thoroughly triggered from that.
It got unbelievably toxic at points.
I really like that tournament organizers are willing to try those new things. I think that that's one of the strengths as a bigger TO, right? If I want to run an experimental event or an experimental format, it's of a higher risk than somebody who's got a smaller base, right? So I love the idea that there are TOs out here who will take on the opportunity to try these things out to prove that they either do or don't work. In terms of speaking specifically to best of 2 or first to 2, I think that doing a fixed number of games within a given pod, like 4 for example, is potentially doable. The problem is just how weird 4-player free-for-all is. And I honestly want to look into like what Catan does, right? Because they have the same problem that we do, where there's a turn order that matters and it's a 4-player free-for-all, and they have the same set of multiplayer constraints that we do. I don't know of many other analogies or games that follow that same functionality. I mean, even like battle royales have some sort of segmentation in first through 99th or whatever.
Yeah, and it's also like there's less like there's no turn order in those like games, and you could like it's distributed over like a way larger number of teams as well. Like I feel like being like 4-person free for all specifically is really awkward, because 1v1 is really well defined and really like easy to find formats for. And if you have like a very large number of people playing free for all, then things are like less toxic and it's just sort of like less personal. But specifically like low person but more than 2 people free for all gets like really weird in terms of tournament structuring.
Yeah. You ever tried to play a 6-person CDH game? Those politics are nasty.
So we have, and it's also the worst part about that was that I'm pretty sure it was Matt on Opus Thief, which like in like way more than any other deck in the table benefits from having more people in the game.
Nice.
Oh no.
Dude, I don't know what you're saying, man. Long games, once you get to like the 3-hour mark, everyone is set together to finish the game, no matter how.
That's the opposite of my experience. People, you get to the 2-hour mark,
just
and
get
people are like,
bitter
I
and just
have a
win the
counterspell. I
game.
don't want to cast anymore. Just win, please.
Okay, so I did want to
go for it.
I did want to get to sort of as like our last major topic here. We sort of touched on it before. So this is after the post event, getting into pre-event for the next like event. We'll talk about this in terms of March as of 2022, I guess. Since that would be the next event that you would be running if it happens to happen.
If it happens,
terrible.
There's a lot of
Anyway.
question marks I have to. A lot of question marks I need answers to. But
so how do you? I guess the question here is, how do you then turn the experience of the previous tournament into a new tournament? And also, how the hell do you figure out, like, when you actually have the mental recharge time to go and run another one? I feel like those are the 2 big ones.
Yeah. So once you've done your first event, you have a really good sense of doing the second one. In my experience, at least, personally. There's more question marks for Marquesa 2022. Because, of course, it would be in person as opposed to online. So there's more questions there. But the Tier 1 experience helped a lot with, setting aside a lot of those more tangible in-person concerns and giving me that sort of experience. The big thing that you mentioned there briefly that I think I can't speak enough on is the mental recharge time. I no, it will differ for every person. Obviously, it will differ on the amount of hours you do and how many people are on your team. But I have a problem, an individual problem that I refuse to do something that isn't like the best possible way that I could do it. I either will not do it at all, or I will do it to the point where it's as good as I could feasibly or realistically make it. And that frequently results in me severely overworking myself. It's I mean for Oktoberfest this year, for example, I was up at like 5 a.m. the day of the event, and I didn't go to bed until like 3 a.m. to get up at 5 a.m. the next day, or 6 a.m. the next day. And like that's I don't know what, a 20 something, it was like a 20 something hour day followed immediately by another 14-hour day. And it was like I could have gone to bed, but there was things that I wanted to get done that didn't need to get done, but that I wanted to get done that I would not have been happy with unless I had gotten done that night. And so you have to be, especially as somebody who is very passionate and very driven to do a good job, I need to remember to step back and take time for myself, right? I'll give you guys some perspective on this. Looking at the summer, June, July, August. So July, I made a little schedule here because I wanted to pull up the dates. So the three middle weekends in July, I ran Summer Bloom. I took a week off. Then I ran the Mox Bowl, and then I flew to Denmark and ran Tier 1. And then I flew back and ran the Playing with Power tournament. And then 2 weeks later, I ran Memories Journey. And then 3 weeks later, I ran Oktoberfest. And, I am about to finish my degree. So, I've got 2 weeks left essentially in my semester to finish out my degree. And the only reason I'm taking classes this term is because I failed them over the summer. Like I failed university level courses that I had been paid for because I was running events. I had to call my parents and say, "Hey, I'm failing these classes in university, but I'm getting flown to Denmark. Is that okay?" And like people don't realize what that. I mean, not. I understand I'm very fortunate. I'm in university. My parents helped me pay for it. I've got lots of opportunities. I am not for a second complaining about having the opportunity to go to Denmark to run a Magic event. It's one of the best experiences I've ever had. I'm quite young. Lots of great stuff. But I mean, it comes at a personal cost. To run this many events to this scale, to this degree, it comes at a personal cost. And I have to look at the next 4 months of my life and think, do I want to spend between 5 and 10 hours a week for the next for the next 4 months to plan this event and to run this event? And like, I do, but I also know how I felt at the end of October. And I'm thinking, yeah, if I feel like that again, I don't really want to spend 2 whole weeks in a dark pit of a hole after burning myself out on this insane schedule with all of these events back to back to back to back. So, for people running smaller events, be realistic, understand the scope of what you're trying to do. The more pieces you add, the more time you'll add and stuff like that. But there's, for me personally, there's a lot of things like that that people don't realize or don't see that I mean, and again, personal flaws aside, I'll work myself into the ground in a way that other people are probably smart not to, but that just comes with me doing stuff the way that I want it done. I mean, I've been running events for a year. Right? I've been in this business for 1 year and a month now because I helped on the first Oktoberfest last year. That's it. I have 1.25 month, 1 year, 1 month worth of experience, and I've ran 3 of the 4 largest EDH events of all time. Like that's what it takes to do an event like that. So you have to decide, what's it worth to you.
I think the hardest part is, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, I think the hardest part is kind of why, or the difference between the work that you're doing for these, passion tournaments versus like your day job, right? You work so hard
I don't get
on
paid
these.
for this.
You don't get paid, but you work so hard on these projects because you're passionate, and it's kind of like your, in some ways it's your break, and obviously in some ways it's not, right? It's causing your burnout, and that's a tough line.
I was just gonna say, talking about your schedule, that another thing that becomes a lot harder about in-person versus online tournaments is that with in-person tournaments, people tend to want to do stuff after the day
Yep.
ends, and it can sometimes mean you're not in the best shape for the next morning.
I mean, I was playing a game with you and Ian and Yanis in the bar. I think, and I just started misplaying. Like, I just like made 3 or 4 misplays in a row. I missed my Ristic triggers. It's because I was falling asleep at the table. Like, I literally could not keep my eyes open trying to play Magic that day. I
Dude,
had
you've been
just
making
worked
good
14
plays
hours.
all day, but in the tournament organizer grind.
Yeah. And again, I don't want to come across that I'm complaining, right? That was an awesome weekend. I loved going out and doing it, but it is a lot of work, and it's actually pretty funny. The day after Oktoberfest, like right at the end of the event or something, I had gotten that somebody had made some comment about TOs being lazy. It's a lazy format, something like that. And I was just like, yeah, I get it. Like, sure, you're welcome to criticize, but there are many things that are true, and that's just not one of them. There was nothing. I really don't think there was anything lazy about the days and the hours and time that I put into this event. So it's sometimes tough to get that kind of feedback, but
Just remember to save the VODs, and then everyone will think you're competent. That's right.
Actually,
I don't know what
I will say
what you're talking about.
If any aspiring TO wants to take anything away from this podcast that isn't any of the incredibly important advice that we've been dispensing over the past hour and a half, save your VODs. Because that is actually such a plight of like the entire CDH tournament scene at this point. Is like we have VODs for probably under half of all the events ever run.
In terms of effort to perception of professionalism, that's definitely the most value you can get.
Cool. I think that was a pretty great stopping off point. With a great message at the end there.
Yeah.
So I think that about does it for our main topic. So thank you so much, Joking. We're still gonna have you on for the rest of this, but I'm thanking you now because that was incredibly informative.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, and that's just something that we don't like. It's not something that gets talked about in like any scene that much. Is like the actual behind the scenes and like life of a tournament organizer when they're running these tournaments. So it's awesome to
life. I don't have a life, man. What are you talking about? All I do is run events.
It's awesome to be able to get a peek behind the veil on that stuff. So that's great. That being said, we are going to move into everybody's favorite topic, favorite segment. Gut check.
I feel like I need to give a Morgan gut check right now. I don't know.
Check.
Matt, do the thing.
God, it's so bad, guys. All right, but it's something.
It's something.
So what, in your mind, is the best gummies ever served at a tournament? I'm just kidding. What is, in your mind, the 4th best combo in the format right now?
4th best combo. Good question.
You want to tell me what the first 3 are?
No, you
No.
have to figure
Don't
those
even
out.
talk
You
about
have
your
to-
first
you have to
3.
figure You have to
Okay.
figure those out, and then
We're
we're
not
talking about the 4th, in your opinion.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm trying to create division and
Yeah.
answers here.
Okay, yeah, I got
I
it.
think we all know what 1 is,
Yeah,
but
I got it.
All right. Can you? All right.
I didn't
first,
actually prepare a response for this, so I do have to think about it.
What do you? Can you define combo?
A combination
Consistently,
of 3 or fewer cards that wins the game. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like on the spot.
I was gonna say something like that.
Like, is
Yeah.
ad nauseum a combo?
No. Something that like actually
No.
like ends the game.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not fourth
Okay, okay.
best win condition, fourth best combo.
Okay, but like certainly we're counting infinite mana.
Yeah, like infinite mana stuff. Like
Yeah.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
4th best.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, actually, I have a second good
Does-
one that I'll read off first because I haven't gotten
Is
I
that the 5th
I haven't
best?
gotten enough mileage off of this yet, so I'm gonna put it out there, and then I'll give my real one. All right. We'll we'll make this a real gut check. You guys have 10 more seconds. And then we'll lock it in.
Okay, I have one that's kind of a cheat,
All right.
and maybe I'll
Okay,
come up with a backup in case it's disqualified.
we'll have Nick go last so that he has a bit more time. Matt, what you got?
No,
I have to start.
Yeah, you gave it. Actually, I guess we can. Okay, we'll do you last. Nick can go through.
I'll go
All right,
first.
go
How
for
about
it.
that?
Yeah.
Because I'll have probably the
All
spiciest combo. I think, and again, maybe this doesn't qualify, but I'm gonna say that the Najeela combo, Najeela and Derevi or Najeela and Nature's Will is the fourth best combo.
That's a good one.
That is a good one.
I dig it.
In that case, actually, so what's the three above that in your opinion then?
Oh, the three above.
Wait, no, let's all
Fine.
say
We'll
our
do
fourth,
three
and then
above
we can-
after
then
we all
can
do
All
it.
right,
Yeah.
we'll save that for another time then. All right, Morgan, what you got?
Does Razikev count?
Sure, yeah. We'll allow
Yeah,
Razika.
in my mind, Razikev
Like it
counts.
technically just enables like what's usually a Thoracle combo, but
No, Razikev's fine.
Makes sense. So the meme ants.
Wait, is that it, or is that wait? That's your fourth?
Yeah.
Okay.
So meme answer is the Yorion combo because it's hot as fuck and is incredibly annoying to disrupt.
I don't know, man. That kind of sounds like the best combo. Right now.
Yeah, just top of the list.
You're
It's also
making it
just
sound
not a
really
combo.
good.
It is a
Like,
combo. It
not
wins the
in
game.
the-
People
in the-
concede to it. It's a combo.
Okay, that's-
it just has an incredibly variable number of pieces, and the only consistent part of it
that's
is
like saying
Yorion.
Seedborn Muse is a combo.
I mean, honestly, Yorion just seedboard uses hard enough. The rest of the table concedes, so I don't know what to say. Anyway,
That's okay. No, that actually, I guess it's like saying Seedborn Muse and Training.
Yeah,
Cards is a
exactly.
combo.
Yeah.
I think my actual answer right now is actually probably Hulk. I think Hulk's like still incredibly well positioned against a lot of the rule law stuff currently, and doesn't see enough play.
That is a great answer. I was actually going to say Hulk as well.
Nabbed it.
I'm
from
really
me.
happy. I'm really happy that you didn't rank Hulk higher.
Oh yeah, right. Do you have a backup? Or are you just gonna slam Hulk too?
I'm slamming Hulk
Alright.
too. Yeah.
That's-
It was a debate. It was a debate between Hulk and Isorev, but I think
Yeah,
Hulk
check-
is
I
better.
also Isorev is incredibly underrated right now, just because it layers so nicely. Like,
it is. This isn't the underrated gut check, but it is. Quite.
yeah, dramatic reversal is just like such a good card, and nobody plays it for some reason. Anyway, I guess because it doesn't synergize explicitly with
Also,
Dockside.
colorless Nas payoffs, kind
yeah,
of good.
yeah, that too.
Yeah.
That's fair.
All right, well, that's gut check.
All right.
Yep.
What's
What-
your number
what-
one, guys?
What's up, Nick?
Yeah. What is everybody's top three?
I mean, so number one is clearly
Console.
birthing pod.
Oh yeah, that.
Yeah, tied closely with Yorion lines.
I think yeah, exactly. I think it's like it's consult then breach, and then like any number of other things. I think I don't know. For me, it's probably.
I mean, I think Dockside combos
Yeah.
are
I had that in mind.
they're not. It's not like a particularly great combo. It's just that Dockside
It's
is like
so
such an
free.
insane
It's so
card
free.
Yeah.
that like just putting one card to enable it in your deck is like such a small ask, and
Yeah.
often the requirements aren't actually even that high.
Yeah.
I kind of had Dockside though in a similar spot to Adnaz. Just like the dedicated Dockside combos, I haven't been super impressed with,
Hmm.
or at least
Yeah.
the decks that have them haven't been super impressive. But it's usually because the dedicated Dockside combo decks are non-black, or as ones that I see.
Yeah. I think
Yeah,
my
I was-
answer for third would actually probably be Najeela. I think it's probably like the third best right now. Anyway,
I definitely had Dockside in mind, and I was thinking about it, but I'm like Dockside Emil, Dockside Baron just feel underwhelming. I definitely have Entomb Reanimate or Entomb / Unmarked Grave. Basically, essentially Reanimation is as my number
Yeah,
3
sure.
best combo,
Yeah,
which is somewhat
that's my
generalized.
third as
but-
well.
I guess I struggle with rating Najeela that highly as a combo. Just like, I think it's at least somewhat telling that other than, I mean, I guess the Sisei builds have played it, but like, it's not a card that, or it's not a combo that like anyone has ever really thought, I'll just jam this
right. Even though it's like two
the
cards
99.
and relatively mana efficient.
Even though it's like it's 2 cards, they're both creatures, therefore very accessible. Like I think a combination of I guess what it is as a combo, if you're not playing a Najeela deck, those like 2 free setup turns that you typically use where you want to go to combat with like Najeela and 2 warriors, right?
Yeah.
That you don't get those when
you have to find the Najeela.
when Najeela's not in the command
Yeah.
zone. Like if you just tutor a Najeela, people will be like, "Well, I guess we have to kill that."
Because
But
why
like,
did he tutor it?
The other,
and
the
then
other
we're
problem with
done.
having-
We can move on.
The other problem with having them
As
in the 99 is that you have to play a 5-color deck, and your card quality is already so high. You already have access to all of the other combos that we just listed, right? Like you just have to.
Sure.
Are you really
Yeah.
going to choose to play that one as an alternative?
Yeah, I guess yeah, and it's the only deck I could think of that's really seen it is the like Sisay Giganta build, but that's obviously you're limited. Like you can't play better combos because you can't play
Giganta.
Thoracle. Obviously, Giganta limits what you can play, and you also have you can tutor. It's like tutorable from the command zone. But
Yeah.
like the fact that even like the like Kenrith stacks builds that want a rule of law resistant creature based win condition and also null rod resistant
And also
creature-based win
do
condition.
things under possibility storm block, hilariously. Like,
Yeah, have
Mm.
like those decks haven't even really considered
yeah.
it as a combo.
That's fair.
Cool. Well, that's our gut check for today. Again, as always, we have voting up for these in our Discord at time of release. So go check that out. Go vote. Go vote on previous ones after you listen to those episodes, or just vote on them. To stand alone. Do it. Go engage, please. But with that, I think that's about it for this episode. Actually, I will say before we end, Joking, is there anything that you want to shill before we sign off here officially?
Sure. Of course, I run the organization Monarch Events, so feel free to check us out on Discord and stay tuned for any upcoming events we might be doing. I don't know if we'll be doing a paper event in March of 2022, but if we do, make sure to be there because it'll be an awesome event. I assure you of that.
Awesome. Well, that does about wrap it up for this episode. If you guys would like to reach out to us with any questions, comments, or concerns, you can always contact us on Twitter at Into the North Pod, via our email at intothenorthpodcast@gmail.com, or on our Discord server, the invite link for which can be found in the description for this episode. An extra special thanks to all of the patrons who help cover the expenses for our show and allow us to work toward improving the quality of the podcast. If you too would like to become a patron, we are at patreon.com/intothenorthpodcast. Another way you can support us is via our TCG Player affiliate link. Anytime you want to purchase something from TCG Player, if you use our affiliate link, which is also in the description of this episode, a portion of your purchase goes towards supporting the podcast. Thank you, as always, to the band Vox Cadre for our lovely podcast music, to Nate Slubber for our equally lovely podcast logo, and to our video editor, Manta Ray Hat. Next episode will be out in 2 weeks. Until then, see ya.
Bye.